So I'm Jay Capasso. I'm the Regional Specialized Extension Agent for Water Resources located at the North Florida Research Education Center, Swanee Valley. And I'm also formerly the row crop extension agent in Columbia County. And I'm going to be presenting to you today on side dressing chicken litter as an efficient and economical fertilizer application method. And basically, in this trial, we were looking at side dressing chicken litter, basically a nutrient management regime in one treatment on farm that included side dressing chicken litter added to that nutrient management regime, and then another treatment that was completely conventional fertilizer. And I'll go further into that. And I'd like to thank my co-PIs, Dr. Kelly Morgan and Dr. Django Bada of the Soil, Water, and Ecosystem Sciences Department. So this trial started because a grower came to me and they were concerned about the high fertilizer prices back in 2022. In nominal terms, not adjusted for inflation, we had the highest fertilizer prices ever in 2022. This was due to multiple reasons, but this was right after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This is after COVID, where we had supply chain issues, and there are other issues affecting upward prices on fertilizer. So this was a huge concern going into 2022 for growers, especially for field corn. Field corn in the Swanee Valley region is the crop that really requires the most fertilizer, at least in terms of nitrogen. And this is important because we have basin management action plans implemented in this region for both the Santa Fe River and the Swanee River. And we're trying to get to a restoration nitrate concentration of 0.35 milligrams per liter. And most of these water bodies and their associated springs were 1 or 2 milligrams per liter or higher. So this is a big concern in this region, is trying to reduce nitrate leaching and entering these water bodies. We've had really high fertilizer prices in the past, especially in real terms, which means that they're adjusted for inflation. Back in 2008, we had a spike in fertilizer prices. And before this graph and before my time as well, back in 1975, we also had very high fertilizer prices that I think was probably affected by the oil crisis. So, this trial started as the grower coming to me because he had a side dressing rig already that he got through cost share from the Swanee River Water Management District. And he was interested in whether he could use it for side dressing chicken litter. You might think that this was an idea that a whippersnapper like me that's straight out of UF might approach a grower trying to get them to do something sustainable and implement a best management practice. But actually, this idea came straight from the grower themselves. So basically, the methods of this trial was that we have a grower in Columbia County that is growing corn under hard hose irrigation or reel irrigation. And he wanted to compare side dressing conventional fertilizer, his grower standard treatment, to his chicken litter treatment, or a new treatment and containing chicken litter that was applied on top of the conventional fertilizer he was already applying. So basically, the only differences between these two treatments, we came out with a starter 2390 that's applied at planting. So we planted, that's a typo there, but we planted March 26th of 2023. And then on April 18th and April 19th, on back-to-back days, we came out and we applied chicken litter that was side dress. And the reason we did that is just because side dressing chicken litter was a very time-consuming process. And then again, we followed the rest of his nutrient management regime that was in the rest of his field. On April 26th, we came out and we applied 60 pounds of nitrogen. On May 3rd and May 11th, we came back and we applied more conventional fertilizer as well. So his chicken litter treatment in terms of nitrogen applied was 232 pounds of nitrogen, which is still under the IFAS rate for irrigated field corn at his plant population. And that's his chicken litter treatment that contained extra nutrients applied through the chicken litter. His other treatment, his grower standard treatment, was the same thing, just without that extra chicken litter that was applied on April 18th and April 19th. And the total nitrogen for that was more like 200 pounds. I'm sorry, that's another typo there. It was just minus that 34 pounds of chicken litter from the 232. So I think it was about 198 pounds total in his grower standard treatment. And you can see our study design down here. You see we replicated each treatment 4 times. And the grower standard, again, the GS stands for grower standard, and the chicken litter, the CL stands for chicken litter. And we were trying to do just 4 replicates. It's not quite a randomized block design because we ordered the treatments to make it easy for the grower cooperator to identify where to apply the chicken litter. So one of the first things we did with this chicken litter is we went ahead and we tested it at the IFAS livestock waste testing lab. And this chicken litter was supposed to have a nutrient content of a 333, but as Wendy noted earlier, that chicken litter can vary, whatever batch you get. And when we tested this chicken litter, we found an NPK analysis of 2.29% nitrogen or total Kdol nitrogen, 1.25% total phosphorus, and a 3.62% total potassium. Now, one thing to note is that that's the total phosphorus and the total potassium. That's not necessarily P2O5 or K2O, but that's basically what we found in this treatment. And so our total treatment here for the chicken litter was 233 pounds of nitrogen was applied per acre, 58 pounds of P2O5 was applied per acre, and 105 pounds of K2O was applied per acre. And now in the grower standard treatment, we had 198 pounds of nitrogen applied, 15 pounds of P2O5 applied, and 40 pounds of K2O applied. So we had extra nutrients applied in the chicken litter treatment because we were trying to try out this method and see how it worked and see if the grower wanted to use side dressing chicken litter in the future as a method to maybe replace some of his nutrients going out as fertilizer with the high fertilizer prices. We started doing this and we calibrated the first product side dressing rig, and that was probably the most interesting thing we did in this project. And we found at its maximum rate, we could only apply about 750 pounds of chicken litter at a time. Now, in Wendy's presentation earlier, chicken litter was being applied on the tons to the acre. I forget where it went up to. I think its lowest treatment was 1 ton to the acre, and I think it may have gone up to like 10 tons or something like that. So that's a lot of chicken litter. And usually we broadcast apply chicken litter because we just want to get it out on the field. Basically in this treatment, we're using side dressing to see if we can be more efficient by applying it within the row. But we had a limited carrying capacity in that first product side dressing rig, and we can only apply so much at a time. Chicken litter has a lower density compared to conventional fertilizer, and it also has a lower nutrient content in terms of N, P, and K compared to most conventional fertilizers. So when we calibrated this rig and we found out that we could only apply 750 pounds of chicken litter at a time, the grower looked at me and said, well, I'd only have to go out here like 12 or 14 times to apply the IFAS rate for nitrogen. So we quickly realized that this might not be the most feasible practice or practical practice for the grower to implement. However, we had a great grower cooperator and he decided to go through with the project, but we decided to only supplement the chicken litter on top of one nutrient management treatment. And that's also why we did it back-to-back days. We just wanted to get applying the chicken litter out of the way. So these were our corn yield results at the end of the season. And we've got bushels per acre along the y-axis and the replicate along the x-axis. And again, GS stands for the grower standard treatment, and chicken litter stands for that treatment that contained extra chicken litter applied. And one thing to note here in replicate 1, we did have an issue where, there's always an issue in an on-farm trial. And we had an issue basically where the starter fertilizer wasn't applied in the replicate 1 treatment. So I thought about taking that out, but I decided to just leave it in here. But we didn't find significant differences between yield in these treatments. So that's one thing to note. We took tissue results and we only collected these one time. I believe this was basically at vegetative tassel or just before. And you can see our results here. We have nitrogen and phosphorus is what we were looking at. And again, we have the replicates for each chicken litter treatment and then replicates for each grower standard treatment. We also took soil nitrate data, and we only collected this from the 0 through 6 inch surface depth. It would be interesting, obviously, to look at this at different depths to begin to look at leaching. But we found these were our results. Again, growers with the sample along the x-axis and the concentration along the y-axis. And then we also were interested in soil phosphorus, and we took both samples for Malic 3, the M3 stands for Malic 3, and then Malic 1 phosphorus. And you can see we had higher values for Malic 3 phosphorus, which is typical. That's what you generally see. Malic 3 extracts more concentration of phosphorus compared to Malic 1. And what was also interesting was we also had a total phosphorus value, and the total phosphorus values were, in some cases, actually less than the Malic 3 phosphorus values, which shouldn't be the case. So that was one interesting thing that I found. For them, in most samples, the total phosphorus concentration was higher than Malic 3, but in some cases, Malic 3 was, one or two of these samples, I think Malic 3 was just higher than the total phosphorus, which again, shouldn't be the case. And moving on to some of the pictures, the first issue that we ran into with this project was that one of these big tote bags of chicken litter that we purchased got wet. And it only happened with one bag, thankfully. But you can see when we did have some moisture in the chicken litter, this is a dry material. We were calling it a pelletized chicken litter, but it's really not pelletized. It's a chicken litter that's basically been screened by particle size, and it's air dried. And you can see when it gets wet that it's not flowing through the side dressing hopper there, and that it's clogging up the applicator. And we have some innovative growers in Columbia County, and one grabbed some Spanish moss, which he called nature's paper towels, and it was kind of cleaning it out. But that was the one issue we really ran into. Otherwise, the chicken litter flowed readily through the side dressing rig. We were able to apply it as long as that chicken litter was dry. So this could be a huge mess if a grower was going out to apply it and it rained on them. That could be a huge mess. So thankfully, we didn't run into that issue. And that was another reason we wanted to just get the chicken litter application out of the way. So on those back-to-back dates. And then this is another picture. I'm thankful for Dr. Siju for coming out and helping us out and taking pictures. He's got this picture of us casually trusting our lives under this big tote bag of chicken litter. But basically this process was really time consuming and difficult because we had to continually refill this side dressing rig. We could only apply about 750 pounds of chicken litter at a time. And then the side dressing rig only carried so much fertilizer. So we were constantly getting the front end loader and picking up these big tote bags of chicken litter and dumping it back into the side dressing rig. And we'd have to do this for conventional fertilizer too, but you don't have to do it as often because you're able to, because of the density of conventional fertilizer and the nutrient concentration of conventional fertilizer, we don't have to refill it as often. And this is a major issue with side dressing corn in the Swanee Valley, because this grower is a smaller grower where having a side dressing rig really works out for them. The side dressing fertilizer or banding fertilizer allows him to be more efficient with his nutrient application. But some of these bigger growers aren't keen on side dressing or banding because it increases their costs. It takes longer to side dress fertilizer compared to broadcast fertilizer. You'd have to do it at a slower rate of application. And then a lot of these rigs just don't have the carrying capacity compared to broadcasting rigs. So it is one reason why a lot of growers are broadcasting applying fertilizer compared to side dressing. So in conclusion, this practice works in that the chicken litter flowed readily through the side dressing rig, meaning that it could be used as an application method. However, it is a very time-consuming process, and it had to be frequently refilled. And this is due to the lower density and the nutrient content of the chicken litter. And again, the limited carrying capacity of the side dressing rig. Yield results found no significant difference between the grower standard and the chicken litter treatment. And I think one other thing that's important to note here is that we're applying this chicken litter, but we don't know exactly how much is available the season that we apply it. So the first general rule of thumb that's used by soil scientists and agronomists is that you apply the chicken litter, and in the first year, 50% of it mineralizes and is available. And then in the second year, another 50% of it mineralizes and available. So you're getting to 25% of the chicken litter nutrients that you applied the first year, mineralizing the second year, if that makes sense. So that's another aspect about this, is that we're applying these nutrients to the chicken litter, but we don't know how much is mineralizing exactly without doing further research in the specific field, especially for our sandy soils in Florida. We generalize a lot of what we know about nutrient management based on the rest of the country, which often has heavier soils and a slower or lower temperatures throughout much of the year. So that's one thing to keep in mind here, is that the mineralization of the chicken litter is going to affect what's available for plant uptake. Grower feedback through surveys and just conversations with the grower confirmed that they felt that it was impractical to side dress chicken litter, just because it had to be constantly refilled, and that was the limitation they saw in the practice. And I'd like to thank our grower cooperator. This was a lot of work, and it was also a dirty job. So very thankful for them for collaborating with us on this. I'd like to thank Dr. Sideep Suju and Joel Love of the North Florida Research Education Center, Swanee Valley. My co-PIs, Dr. Kelly Morgan and Dr. Django Bada of the Soil, Water, and Ecosystem Sciences Department. I'd like to thank Dr. Lakesh Sharma and his team for facilitating these BNP mini grants, and for the funding from the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services.